Hey everyone. So the lawlessness in Canada continues. Well, for the Liberal Party of Canada, the ruling class, like I say, this is the hilarious part actually. And I don't think I've pointed this out enough in past videos, so I'm going to do that right now. But you hear all the political or pundit or ruling class, or even those in academia, they always talk about when people like libertarians or even genuine anarchists or critical thinkers predominantly say, hey, we don't need a ruling class. We can figure out ways to figure out like how we can have contractual obligations and live amongst each other socially and economically peacefully without using force, violence, or threats thereof, or theft as a means to an end. But yet they say, oh no, you gotta have rulers. Oh no, oh if you didn't have the rulers, oh it'd be just pure anarchy. Oh it'd be hell on the streets. But meanwhile, your rulers, they actually do live under pure anarchy, or the people that they choose or carry favor for, once again, live under pure anarchy. We, you and I, those of us that actually, we're not part of any connected or ruling class, we got to follow a gazillion fucking rules. And if we break into them and get caught, well, you know how they'll come down heavily on you with the full force and authority of the law, right? Or, well, edicts nowadays, because law, like I say, it's completely subjective at this point, totally arbitrary. But if you do anything, especially if they don't like you, or if you challenge their authority, oh, you're going to feel, like I say, the full force, the representation of the state coming down on your fucking ass. And trust me, I know that with firsthand experience and firsthand knowledge. But these people, like I say, the government dipshits, does any of them, or the banksters, right, or the crony corporations, do they ever get punished? Do they ever suffer anything? No, there's never any punishment for anything they do illegally or immorally. But of course, when you're the ones that get set the rule or lobby the government to set the rules, or, butter them up with a little bit of moolah, right? Like I say, they live under pure anarchy, folks. They don't, what it is they just don't want to share their freedoms. Like, they have absolute fucking freedom to do whatever the fuck they want socially and economically, and their fucking sexual deviancy. I mean, just think about these vile, pathetic pieces of shit that really run this fucking country. Let's just talk about the left. But the right, oh, they're every bit as pathetic and authoritarian. It's just they do it with a little different style. And actually, they're much more boring in their approach. Like, fuck you conservatives really suck, tell you the truth. As much as I was hoping you would have got on board and started to fucking show a little boldness with supporting Bernier, I've seen now time and time again. And even Bernier, oh, come on, man. You're not helping your situation. Oh, we gotta rally the troops. You gotta rally around our master, right? Ah, Jesus, I've lost all fucking hope in you now, completely. So forget that. Shh, wipe this slate clean now. Just like with Trump down south, it's like, forget about I thought, oh, there might be some way, some avenue, nah, fuck the politics. Like I say, it's just, I'm back to being just me once again. Screw you all. Fuck you all as far as I'm concerned, because you're all just a bunch of pathetic losers that are just, I gotta go clamor for the government or the state. Anyways, whatever. But like I was saying, pure anarchy, and this is a headline at a National Post, just to help give you a little more clarity in regards to the fact that there's no laws in this land. Well, like I say, other than, or if you're like Gerard Como or whatever that guy's name, right? Gerard, the guy that took a few fucking cases of beer across the border from Quebec to New Brunswick. Oh yeah, the Supreme Court said, no, we have no free trade in Canada, but they're looking for free trade deals for everyone else around the world, but in Canada, no. Like I say, fucking hypocrites and lawlessness. Just arbitrary edicts is how the government runs the country today. And like I say, it doesn't matter if they come from the left or right. Same kind of bullshit. No moral or philosophical or even genuine legal consistency anymore. Rule by edict, arbitrary. The king's decree. That's how you live today, folks, whether you want to recognize it or not. Sorry about that reality check, but it's reality. You want to close your eyes, plug your ears, whatever. Reality's still going to exist. Even once you take your fucking fingers out of your ears and take your hands away from your eyes, reality's still going to be there, like it or not. Headline on a National Post. What you need to know about the ongoing influx of asylum seekers in Canada. Oh yeah, just pour across the border. I know as a truck driver, this is the fucking hilarious part, folks. I'm going to give you a real quick anecdotal story before I get into the article. But when I was driving long haul, crossing the border at Houlton, Maine, from New Brunswick, Woodstock, Maine into Houlton, or Woodstock, New Brunswick into Houlton, Maine, I had a half of a submarine sandwich. What was it called? A Dagwood or whatever. It's basically like an assorted sub. I had it in my fridge in my truck, in the cab of my truck. On the long haul trucks, you have fridges in them. And I had already eaten half of it, but I kept the other half for maybe later on down the road. But when I went across the border, that was during the time there was a beef ban. You're not allowed to import beef into the U.S. But yet, I ended up, making a long story short, they run me through the ringer because a guy, well, they stopped me for one of those periodic checks, make sure, I didn't have any whatever, right? But they found I have a sub in my fridge. And when the guy was coming down off my truck, this little pathetic piece of shit, petty tyrant, he looked at me like as if I actually was like, what the hell is, because he had this strange look upon him, like as if I had done something wrong. And he said, what's this? And he holds up the fucking bag with a half a sub in it. I said, it's a half of a sub. Yeah, I think they call it a Dagwood. Do you not pay attention to the rules? Like, go through the whole rhetoric. Like, well, I'm not importing beef. That's kind of my lunch, man. I was going to have it for my supper, actually, but I'm not importing it. Not like I was going to stand down in fucking Bangor Corner selling the fucking salami or the fucking ham or the cheese slices out of it. You fucking dipshit, piece of shit, little petty tyrant. But anyways, make a long story short, 3.5 hours later, I have to go through the border, go into Holton, and pay the fine, because they said either I pay the fine now or I have to go through court, which means, think about what kind of, I got to go through court, and it wasn't even in Maine, and the court was in fucking Connecticut. It was like, so, well, of course I'm going to pay the fine. It's just like with the mafia. Hey, you might as well just pay them fucking off so you don't have to deal with the bullshit, right? But like I say, treat me like a fucking common criminal for having to have a sub. But hey, if you want to fucking run across the border, or treat dude that want to have a fucking few cases of beer and cross across the border, and if you look at Section 21, it's plain fucking English, folks. Plain English. We're supposed to have free trade interprovincially. But well, like I said, it's ruled by edict. But hey, if you want to come across the border to the tunes of thousands or tens of thousands illegally, like it is illegal to cross international borders or country borders. But it's okay. It's okay because Trudeau said so. And his ilk said so. Wow, folks. What a fucking time. What a state we live in. Like, this is, there's no genuine freedom. Well, unless, like I say, unless you're part of the connected or ruling class. Then you have some, well, actually, you have absolute freedom. Even in your, like I say, in your sexual deviancy, like that piece of shit, dipshit. Like, I read this whole big article. I won't go on to that anyways, about this guy that has the sex ed curriculum. They set up the sex ed curriculum in Ontario. What a incest and shit. Like, what a vile piece of shit of a man that is. But that's cool. That's okay for libtards, for the leftists. Sexual deviancy of any kind is completely fine. But, like I say, try to take a few cases of beer or have a half a sub. No. You're a criminal, motherfucker. Or like when I lost my driving license, my truck driving license as a long haul truck driver for having a few beer while I was out on my ATV. There was no criminal activity. There was no victim. But hey, once again, mandatory minimums, rule by edict. They criminalized me for doing something, like I say. Anyways, let's just read in this article, folks. I'm really fucking wound up today, and I got to tell you, it's because there's just too much shit going on here. It's like I'm not seeing enough pushback there. I'm seeing, like, all I'm really seeing out there on the landscape is people like they're going to run to their political tribe or their political gang. It's like, let's all circle the wagons and surround our little collective gang on the right. Or those on the left, we got to do our thing and support our gang on the left. Meanwhile, people like myself, like, what? You're all a bunch of fucking authoritarian pieces of shit. Why Canadians don't recognize this? Well, I know they're indoctrinated, but it's like, this is the age of information, folks. Your excuses, like, as far as I'm concerned, because you have access today, and you all do. Don't pretend you don't. You do have access to information. You have a computer, a smartphone, a laptop, a tablet, whatever. You have access to information today, and there's no excuse. In the past, there was lots of excuses they could have offered. Today, no. And going forward and into the future, you'll never be able to, your children, your grandchildren, you will never be able to, you can propagandize bullshit or lie today, but the future's going to tell the tale. And they'll all be able to say, oh, you fuckers, you were a bunch of cowards and conformists, and you were so complacent. I guess what? Because the master gave you what? An extra, slipped you a little bit of dessert, like, Kathleen Wynne. Here, I'll throw a little bit of your money back at you. I'm stealing $100 from you, but hey, I'll give you $25 back. Aren't I a good person? Look at my benevolence. Oh, how great I am. Anyways. So far this year, 6,373 irregular migrants have arrived in Canada illegally, 128% over the number who arrived in Canada between January and April 2017, which was 2,784, as if that wasn't enough already. I mean, what the? I mean, think about what that means month by month or day by day, folks. But anyways, it's just insanity, like I say. Pure, like I say, anarchy exists. It's just not for you and I. Freedom exists, just not for you and I. Not for the tax serf subjects or slaves in Canada, because they recognize you guys are all, and girls are all so conformist and complacent. They can do whatever the hell they want to you, and you'll just go along and bend over and lube up for them. Ottawa. The numbers of illegal border crossing is up significantly this year compared with the same period last year. So federal and law enforcement officials have been preparing for possibility of another spike as the weather warms up. Departmental RCMP and border officials provided a technical briefing this week on the plans they have developed as a result of lessons learned from pressures and concerns arising from last year's spike in irregular migrants coming across the Canada-U.S. border. What? Yeah. What are you going to, instead of having 2 people carrying the luggage for them, you'll get 3 or 4 because some of these mindless order followers or enforcers of the state, what, did you harm your back carrying the luggage for these illegals all that time? Is that the new policy we're talking about? Anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below because as far as I'm concerned, it's just reporting. I just feel like I feel like I'm a record that just keeps skipping. It's like repeat, 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 repeat. So I'm sure anything contained within this article is probably not going to offer you a whole lot extra as far as revelations other than the numbers. But we all know there's a massive amount of illegals that are crossing the border daily to Canada, and nobody seems to fucking care. Well, I mean, there's some people that are, yelling out about it, but mostly a lot of the people I'm actually seeing that are outraged or against it is only because but they're brown people or they're black people. So they're not saying it from a moral or logically or legal standpoint, because even some of the conservatives are like, especially if you're conservative, like if you're a business owner, you're like, yes, cheap slave labor. So I suppose that's why they're trying to speak out both sides of their mouth. And the leftists, well, hey, maybe some of those rich elitists can use these people as servants or nannies or babysitters. So like I say, the ruling class from both sides of the political aisle, they even if they suggest that, they're a little bit outraged, in reality, they don't give a fuck. It's up to you and I and the masses that have to put up with, paying for all this shit and competing with these migrants, these illegals that obviously don't, they're not on the hook like the rest of you are. So how are you going to compete with them? You can't. You cannot compete with them. They've changed the game. They've changed the rules. They've ripped up the social contract, the concept of the social contract. So really, it's of paramount importance that you start pushing back. Jesus, have some courage and conviction, folks, because the culmination of all this shit is all going to come to a head, and that's just one part of it. Think about all the other things that I've covered in the 600 plus videos I've covered or I've produced so far. A lot of stuff you got to cover, folks. So you might want to start stepping up the game, start pushing back. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.